As you enter the room, there's a 15-foot wide area with a domed ceiling, inside of which there's some kind of acid pool suspended in the air. You think by some kind of magic. On the far end of the room, there is a petrified fish person monster thing, and he's got a box in his hand. What do you guys want to do? Whoa, hold on. Time out, pause. And come on, guys. I know we've all been there. Sometimes we just gotta phone it in because we want the day to be over, or it's been a long day or whatever. D&D is supposed to be fun, and it's our job as a dungeon master to put our players into the spirit to play and to really give them something they're going to remember. And if all you're giving them to remember is, okay, so we did the thing, was that really game day? That's what I thought. Hey guys, my name is Graham Johnson. Welcome back to Tabletop Glory. Now today is not a miniature painting day. Normally that's what we do on the channel, but I promised a long time ago that I would start doing more Dungeon Master tip videos back when I was really kind of active on TikTok. And although most of my time, which I used to spend working on TikTok, is now dedicated to this YouTube channel, I still feel a certain obligation that I need to kind of follow through with some of those promises, especially considering that with YouTube, it's a much better platform to be making these kinds of videos. So today is going to be the first video in what I hope to maybe be a long line of Dungeon Master tips. Now, this is applicable to 5e, Pathfinder, pretty much almost any type of RPG. I'm going to try to make things generic enough that you can kind of crossbreed things and make sure that everything kind of works no matter what platform you're playing on. Now what I want to do real quick is I would like to show you, if I had the proper time to set up an encounter for something like Roll20, kind of show you on screen what I would try to do with sound effects and everything. Now understand that if it's in person, it's going to be drawn out and it's going to have miniatures and have a very similar vibe. I have some type of sound effect programming that I use on my cell phone, which can also be used on all kinds of different devices, so that no matter what my setup is, I should be able to set things up and get it going. Usually I just use it for music and sound effects and things like that, but it's a lot more diverse than that. But there's tons of stuff out there like this. A lot of it's free, so don't feel bad if you don't have something like that already. You can just do a quick Google search and find something, or just go and check the App Store and look for whatever free version you think is going to work for you. Even the paid versions for stuff like this tends to only be $1 or $2 and really isn't that bad. Okay guys, we're moving out of 14A into room 14B, just so you're all aware of where we're at on the map. As you enter a small room with a high domed ceiling obscured by an iridescent green liquid suspended in the air, the smell of sulfur stings your nose and your eyes begin to water. You spy an 8-foot tall armored fish monster at the back of the room, only to realize it's not moving. The room is eerily clean, especially compared to the hallway that you've just previously come through. As you approach the statue, you realize it a petrified monster of sorts. He stands roughly in the center of the room, with his back against the western wall. Outreached is his hand in a northerly direction, clutching in his webbed hand a small wooden box, ornate in design, clutched so tight that even in his petrified state, the skin is ripped from how tightly his hand is grasped around it. What would you like to do? That was an excerpt from Dungeon of the Mad Mage, a continuation of Waterdeep Dragon Heist. One of arguably the best modules, official modules, to start the game with, Dragon Heist is. And although Dungeon of the Mad Mage is very, very grindy, it is a lot of fun. I recommend using Dungeon of the Mad Mage as filler episodes when you're not really 100% sure where you want to take the party or what you want to do. Come up with a reason for them to go into one of these equivalently leveled dungeons, because they are so straightforward, and just spend a few episodes letting them grind out that dungeon and let them get their combat out of their system. There's also a lot of really great traps and some really great magic items that are perfect for the level the characters should be when they're in that part of the dungeon. And there's a lot of easy ways for them to get back out if you need to for story reasons when you're ready to move on. Now, whether you have players physically at your table so you can use miniatures, or whether it's online, one of a really great way to keep experienced players on their toes is reskinning events, traps, encounters, and you really don't need to change them all that much. And in fact, you want to stay away from changing them by a dramatic amount, especially considering the fact that you could unintentionally alter the story to a point where you're no longer running a module, or you're so far away from your original narrative that getting everybody back on track is going to force you to force everyone's hand, and that's no fun. So one of the things that I'm doing currently with an encounter is there's a set in this module where there's a bunch of witches' cauldrons. And typically in the original encounter, in this witches' cauldron, basically these acid monsters kind of come up out of the cauldron and they attack the party. And the party can do one of two things. They can, number one, they can attack the acid monsters, which they can defeat, but it takes a while. They have a considerable amount of HP and they basically have to beat all of the cauldrons, which there's 5 total. Or they can attack the creature, the witch, who is controlling them. However, the witch has the ability to stay at range, so unless you have someone who has the ability to go to them or has a lot of ranged abilities like a ranger, there's not really a good way to fight them because most of your party's going to be stuck on the ground fighting the encounter anyway, so you might as well burn through the witch's magic by defeating all the cauldrons. Now, the way that I'm going to be reskinning this is in a way where I can just take it from table to table and use it whenever I need it. So I've created a lot of these like little tokens essentially, which are going to be like little braziers that I can stick out on the table. And they're just going to symbolize, using red, orange, and yellow, they're going to symbolize hot embers or coals essentially. And I've made 5 of these so I can arrange them in a pentagram if I want to, or whatever else I need. And then I've got 3 of these little 3D printed snake guys that I've cut off at the neck here and mounted into, again, a little brazier that I've made. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to swap them around, so that's how I'm going to have them move, so the party can't really escape them. They essentially have a 10-foot range, and you put them scattered throughout a room that there shouldn't be any safe corners. No matter where your party goes, they should still be able to get hit by one of these things. And that's how we kind of can reskin encounters or traps and things to work in other situations. I've essentially taken this witch's coven brood trap and I've made it in a modular fashion where I can take it and use it somewhere else. Now, does this necessarily have to be fire? No, it could be ice. But I know that I'll probably be using fire more often than not when describing a scene, so I've just gone ahead and painted them all red and orange. But it kind of works either way, and you don't really need to repaint them if you want to reskin them as ice or something else. Acquisitions Incorporated. Now, for many of you, that probably rings a pretty serious bell. I know Acquisitions Incorporated was one of my first experiences with Dungeons & Dragons, whereas others of you, Critical Role is probably something that also strikes a pretty hard role for you guys. Not every dungeon master is Matt Mercer, and not every dungeon master needs to be Matt Mercer. And by the same hand, they don't always need to be Christopher Perkins or Jerry Hawkins either. And that's okay. But all of these really big people in the community have one pretty solid thing in common. They all really like to help write or write their own books and modules, which are really, really great reference material for D&D homebrew. Even if you don't plan to run the module, there are all kinds of wonderful charts. I collect Dungeon Master screens because of the charts that are in them. It's a really great source, and a book that I cannot recommend enough if you like magical items and having a happy-go-lucky fun experience with magic in your world. Acquisitions Incorporated. Besides all the wonderful NPCs that are available through the book, there are actually several pages that highly document out the way that you can create a hangout or clubhouse for your players, or even a mobile hangout such as a horse-drawn wagon, and things that can actually benefit your players, as well as an entire leveling system. So as your party levels up, you actually unlock new things and reasons for your players to continue going back to their hangout, including ways for the players to be making money on the side. Now, a lot of the times there is upkeep that is associated with that, and there are charts to explain everything. No tedious math, it's all right there. And that's more than what can be said for the original guide for how to run a business in the Dungeon Master's Guide, where you have to do a lot of math to figure that out. So in conclusion, for our first Dungeon Master talk, I just want to wrap things up with saying, don't be afraid to be animated. Like, genuinely, don't be afraid to be animated. Practice your voices. Get kind of crazy with it. You may feel dumb going, oh, well, now you see, or just, have some fun. And you don't have to be good at any kind of voice. Like, I'm terrible at female voices. You don't even want to hear that. But just have fun with it. Your players will have just as much fun as you are, and it will be a little embarrassing the first time you do it, and you may get a few strange looks, but try to encourage it, have fun with it. And then number 2, don't be afraid to buy a book or use reference materials from outside of whatever book you're running. And don't be afraid of homebrew. Homebrew doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make everything from scratch. You can totally borrow what you want from where and piece it all together. And just use your little daisy chain ability, just go back in and, well, I really need them to go from here to here. So we're gonna grab this little thing here as a filler to move them from here to here. That's homebrew. And some people may make the argument that it's not because you're just piecemealing things together, but at the end of the day, your story didn't exist before you and your friends told it. And don't forget, it is not just your story. It's their story too. It's everyone at the table. And if they're having fun and it goes off the rails and it doesn't go where you planned, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, you're still telling a fun story. And my biggest piece of advice I want to give you before I end today's video is, if you can avoid setting a destination or a known location in your notes, do so. If your players need to go meet random NPC whatever, and you want to leave that to be announced, if your players are like, ooh, I know where that guy is, you made a reference to it earlier, and you don't remember, well, that's fine now. Now all of a sudden the NPC is exactly where they think he is, because you didn't put it in your notes that they were here when your players think they're over here. So now you can kind of move things around and keep things modular. So if you don't have to set it in a specific place, don't. So that way, if things go off the rails, they always went according to plan. I know this video was a bit weird, and I know it's completely different from anything that we've really posted before, but I hope to start posting more things like this before. If you like this kind of video and you think it's kind of cool and you want to see some more stuff from this, post some ideas in the comments. I'll string as much of them together to make a video as I can and throw in some of my own stuff. Please hit the like button, hit the share, check out some of my other videos if you're into painting miniatures. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I hope your display case is always overfilled and your pile of shame never runs empty. Until next time.